What's going on, Soul Tribe? Let me try that again. I salute the divinity in you, and welcome to the Chariot Friends. Justin here, and how you feeling? The moon is in Leo. You know what? I love a good moon in Leo so much that I had to do this video over again. Yeah, I got a little too excited. But we're going to talk about that. But we're going to talk about the enthusiasm of Leo, but in a way that is sustainable. Because there's a lot of nice energy I think that's going to be happening over these next couple of days while the moon's in Leo. So we'll get into all that here shortly. But if you're new here, again, my name is Justin. And know that when you're coming across this video, you're in sync with the moon, and who doesn't love that? But this is also a place for you if you happen to have Cancer in your placements. Sun, moon, rising, wherever. This one's for you. But we all have a moon placement, and we all have a Cancer section in our chart. So you want to have eyes on the moon, regardless. So this can be for anybody, who wants to get some information from this. And I do tarot card spread, amongst other things, based on that lovely luminary, the good old moon. And I'll talk about what sign it's in, what phase it's in, when it's going void, of course, just all them lunar shenanigans. And just so you're all aware, this is a general reading, not a one-to-one, so take what fits into your story, discard the rest, and everything will be dope. Now, oh, it's still burning. I'm checking this candle. Let's jump into it. Gotta make sure my fire's still going. But yes, let's go ahead and get into the stuff here, to these lunar shenanigans. And depending on when you're watching this, happy Venus Day, by the way. Hope you're all feeling well, feeling lovely with this Venus energy. But the moon is going to enter into, depending on when you're watching this, is going to enter on the 30th of May into Leo at about 1:17 p.m. and that's going to be Pacific time. And we're in a waxing crescent phase. And the waxing crescent phases is where we're starting to get more light. We're getting closer to that first quarter energy. It's really exciting energy. And that's going to be something that we're really going to keep really kind of hone in on as we talk about this, because this will be the time when the moon is forming a sextile with the sun. And now we're getting ready to where it's actually going to come into more exact here. So let's go ahead and, I got a nice little handy dandy chart for you here. Because let me get my drawer out as well. So here's the moon chilling here at 0 degrees of Leo. But this is a very active moon. This would be one I would say over the next couple of days. Pay attention to what is your relationship with Leo? And think about this. I would think about if you happen to, let's say, for example, if you have Taurus placements or Scorpio placements, this is going to be forming a square with your placements. So there might be maybe a little more tension there that's coming up. And I would say, but if you happen to have, like, let's say maybe like Sag or Aries placements, this could be a lot, or even Leo placements. This could be a lot of movement, a lot of motion here. So that would be even something to think about there, because the moon's going to be very busy in this chart here. It's going to form an aspect with everybody. It's going to have, first off, it's going to talk with Saturn. So right off the bat here, we're looking into our responsibilities and our energies, because I don't know about you, but I'm feeling the weight of Saturn a little bit. I'm starting to see where, like, the kind of pressures on the will, the motivation to do things, needing to do the things, but it's like you really gotta hunt for it now. It seemed more accessible not too long ago. So that would be something that I would pay attention to. And when I was talking about the sustainability of Leo, because let's talk about that for a moment. I'm actually going to switch back over here. Leo they're ruled by the sun, and they are the fixed fire sign. They are active or yang in nature. And I like to think of Leo as like an oven. Paying attention to what is fueling that oven. One, the wood that you're putting in there, and then the things that you're cooking with it, the things that you're creating. I think that that's something that the more things that you're doing, what you love, you're doing what your soul calling is, the brighter that you'll shine with Leo. And that's where you can see that Leo energy has this sort of natural just gleam about them sometimes, when they're really in their energy. There's a glow about them that's infectious, that's warm, and it's inviting. It's very generous, I think what Leo energy can bring as well. But you have to be, I think, especially with Saturn being in Aries, we have to be mindful of even the existing things that maybe we've enjoyed doing. We have to be mindful of how we're distributing that energy, where things may be kind of depleting from the maybe kind of main things that you have to prioritize. I think that's something that's really kind of coming into with the Saturn in Aries is everything really worth my energy? And not just like, not just like my time, but just like, is this really what I want to do? Is this really feel? And then like sitting with that, and then maybe even questioning too, like, why is this, again, this thing may be so hard to sustain? Maybe this is like something you naturally do. That might be just something to think about there. But other than that Saturn heaviness, once we kind of process that, it's going to be nothing but like, even that one, that conversation that the moon's having there, this is more ease, because this is a trine that's happening, so let me be mindful of that. This is a trine that's happening with Saturn. So this would be where, if we're working with our energies like that, being mindful of where things are going to flow very smoothly. We're putting our things into the stuff that matters, whether that be maybe you want more time with the home space, or maybe you want more time for, with this, let's say, with this, for example, here, this chart, maybe this aspect is where, this happened actually between this would be pretty little tough axis here between the 8th and the 12th house. But this could be where you maybe want to have some time alone, spend some time like doing things that fuel you up, taking, instead of, being more disciplined with how you share your resources and things like that. And then in doing that, you've created more me time, you're doing more healing, maybe you're writing more, you're painting, you're drawing, you're building. So that could be really nice there, and that's how we're starting off this conversation. And then the moon's going to talk with the sun, it's going to talk with Mercury, it's going to eventually form a conjunction with Mars, which that will be, I feel that being as just like there's, starting with the sun and Mercury, this could be just a lot of like feeling, looking into the things that do really build your energy. Because I actually would just like, I've been kind of slacking on the thing, but I had, the second that I started doing them again, I got this rush, and I was just like, right, because that's why I like doing that in the first place. And why did I get off that, for a minute? And then that got me reflecting. That was just one example, or another example there. But this could be where maybe you're getting some downloads where you've been like, maybe something's been nudging you, like, hey, do this, hey, try that. You've been interested in this thing, and then finally you put your mind to it, you go to do the research, you have the conversation, now we're getting into Mercury, and then you put the energy behind it with Mars, that moon forming that conjunction with Mars. And then at the end of it here, it forms an aspect with Big Papa, Jupiter. And so it ends up on this really abundant. Oh, and then you know what? Forgive me, I almost forgot Venus. Let's talk about flow with Venus. Maybe it was creating good, nice things in your relationships, maybe doing more things that you love, more creative stuff. It's a lovely little ending here. But again, I think that it's looking at the stuff that fuel you, that really fuel you up, looking at, is this really in my soul calling with Leo? Because again, Leo's ruled by the sun. And if we're looking at things that drain us, or we're doing things that drain us, we just want to make those connect or make those corrections, and then putting it, because your time, your energy, all that stuff is really valuable. And I think that's something too, maybe that Saturn may be trying to bring to our attention there too. So just some things to meditate on there. But let's go ahead and get into the tarot. But a couple of things before that, these readings that I do, they're not gender-specific readings, so apply these energies to people as they make sense for your situations. Now, I'm going to pull 6 cards here, and I'm going to do your I-Ching reading at the end, but you got 2 changing lines. It was line 1 and 5, so I'm going to get clarifiers for cards 1 and 5. And I'm going to pull 6 cards, and we're just going to kind of pull a general energy sort of spread, do some themes, and see what the angels got to say for the energies of this moon in Leo. But I'm going to go ahead and pull an oracle card here to start this thing off there. So let's see what the general sort of flavor is for this moon in Leo. Ooh! I love that. That's auspicious. So you got the rabbit spirit here. And it says, now is a lucky time and rabbits are abundant. They have, when you think about rabbits, they have that incredible, just like fecundity. There's just like, whenever it's spring, you see it. The rabbits are about. But I think that this is doing things, it's a lucky time to do those things that when you do it, it's just like something that you don't mind doing over and over again. But that not the thing that I think in the rabbit's case is just for survival. I think this is looking at the things that help you, that thrive, that really help you flourish, especially when that springtime is alive, that sexual energy that the rabbits are experiencing, that fire energy. It's just really on a basis creative energy, that impulse to just like to express oneself, and to maybe even like share that love with others. This could be a collaborative energy as well here. But this to me, and especially like I was saying, you saw, again, maybe with like if you have like maybe Aquarius, Taurus, or Scorpio, this, if you have a lot of it, this may be a bit more tenser for you just because the moon's going to be forming squares with your aspects, but it's still with a little bit of work and a little bit maybe extra effort there. You can still get some really, really, profitable results there. So yeah, I wouldn't sleep on this energy this time, but there's a time. This may not. It's the time to initiate a thing. But again, and we're going to talk about that more with the I-Ching, but there's a patient aspect in getting prepared for that as well. But let's get some tea. And let's get some tarot on this. Let's get your first card. Interesting, huh? Look at Saturn. You got the Ten of Wands here. And this could be where we're just looking at things that may oppress you. This is the Lord of Oppression. It's Saturn in Aquarius, or excuse me, Saturn in Sagittarius. And Saturn is in a fire sign right now. And I would really pay attention to that. How has that been feeling? And what is your understanding of fire energy? Because it's the source, that the motivation, the passion, the desires, the drives. And what I think about Saturn and fire signs is that it may test the will, but it produces an incredible strength. When you're doing that discipline and doing the work of Saturn, the results that you can get are really profound, and to be able to give that will form, that's the gift. Saturn's been going through these real kind of abstract signs. It's where it's normally does well on like air signs and earth signs. Going through this water and fire energy, this is a really unique time, I think, for Saturn to, to be working with Saturn and to really be kind of paying attention to those kind of relationships when it's in those sort of signs. And of course, we look at it when it's in earth and water too, or excuse me, earth and air too. But this one to me is, this Ten of Wands is giving you more sort of like buckling down sort of energy, maybe putting yourself, kind of pushing your limits a little bit, not to the point of exhaustion, but pushing a little bit more than you normally do. This reminds me of like, if we're doing like strength training, eventually you got to push your weights. You can't stay at the same weights, and it'll be uncomfortable at first because it's like, you would think it's only 5 pounds or 10 pounds, but that's a big difference than the normal weight that you've been doing, and to get back into that consistency. But it's going to create this strength, because I get the vision in the Rider-Waite Smith deck. The figure in the Ten of Wands deck, he's jacked. he's got some arms, and so it just creates this. There's this strength that I'm getting with this energy as well here. But let's get a clarifier for this. So you got the Four of Swords here. And that's interesting, that's Jupiter in Libra. And I think that there's something to balancing this thing out there. When we're pushing, we're meditating on just like how far we're pushing. Making sure to take rest, I think, obviously. I would say, because even when it feels like a lucky time to do something, you don't want to go like overboard in a sense. I think that it's like not letting the excitement get out of hand there. Come with a tempered approach. Setting realistic expectations for oneself, what you have the capacity for at that time. And not feeling bad if you can't maybe do as much as maybe someone else possibly can. It's not a time of comparison and thinking about, it's really never, not in the way that is that's defeating or anything like that. If we're ever doing any sort of comparison, it's like maybe like, oh, what, I like how they did that. What does that look like in me? That's one thing. that's coming through. But I'm also getting this energy of just kind of meditating on what is suppressing one energy, and really what's maybe, because I'm getting a little bit of exhaustion from the Four of Wands, and this could be just like maybe you've been over giving as of late. Maybe you've been taking on the burdens of other people's things. That could be something that's coming up in this card, or in this combination as well. So, and that's really too. And this is just something because I'm thinking about your I-Ching advice. There's this energy too of not, about again taking on not more than what we can handle, and being mindful of our limitations, and not to look at them as hindrances, but look at them as, okay, this is my next milestone that I need to set. I want to get to this amount of weight. I want to, do this thing or X thing or whatever achievement thing that maybe you're wanting to do. And again, seeing the people that are supporting that. So, all right, let's go ahead and get into your next card. So you have the Hanged Man here, this elemental water. There is this energy of maybe feeling like things have been stagnant for a while, possibly. Because this may be going to this lucky time here. I'm even getting it's like maybe we've been just like waiting for like the prime time to come, or the most ideal time. And sometimes, life doesn't allow that, or, like sometimes there are things that we just have to do, and that could just be because of deadlines. It could be just because of, maybe availabilities of schedulings and things along those lines there. So that's something that's coming through, where it's like maybe you've been, like waiting on a time or waiting on something specific to happen, but it's just like there's no better time than the present to get something started up here. Or if you have to, or if you're trying to maybe like, I'm just thinking like if you're maybe trying to catch like an auspicious window or something like that, it's like, okay, what are some things that you can build up that can satisfy the will, so that we're, just being patient with the energy, so we're not getting antsy and maybe making some. And this is an interesting combination that's coming through there with that Hanged Man. So yeah, definitely apply it to your situation here. Okay, that's all I'm getting with the Hanged Man. Let's get into your next card. They're really racking up the water. You got the Moon card here, which is Pisces. And there's the Moon card is this confusion sort of energy. And maybe this Ten of Wands, it's almost like you're feeling in, that's interesting. It's almost like now I'm getting like a stuck kind of combination here, where it's like, and it's like you feel the stuckness, like you feel like you're in this place of limbo in a way, but the energies are hot. It's like still even in the nebulous. I'm just picturing like this kind of foggy sort of energy here, but you can feel like you're like walking on a skillet, and it's like the temperature is increasing, and so it's just like, and that can be very uncomfortable. And maybe that's where this Four of Swords is like finding some ways to kind of maybe breathe through that, maybe doing some sort of like activities to help kind of help you process, do something to keep you busy, maybe in a way. Like meditation doesn't just always have to be rest, but it can just be something to kind of help you kind of pull you away from the day-to-day sort of like frazzleness, chaos, and get into a more kind of intuitive space, a more kind of feeling space, a silent space, that's coming through there. I'm just thinking about this beat. I'm thinking about there's this thing with Kefra and carrying the sun and silence and things like that. So there's something going through there too. I'm even paying attention to just like, these almost like, and I think this is interesting, these waves here, down here, can almost look like, like maybe like the theta waves, or like, just like wavelengths. And it's like maybe paying attention to just like your nervous system possibly. I mean, I'm getting like in the sleep state sort of too. There's a lot of mental busyness. Maybe even this Hanged Man is learning how to sit still, and kind of being with what's changing inside of you. That might be something that's, might be coming through there. That's solid. Let's get your next card. Oh, interesting. Very spiritual energy here. So you got the Hermit card here, which is Virgo. You know, this one, Virgo and the Moon, Pisces, they're opposing energies. But I'm just thinking we're going to have our first quarter in the sign of Virgo. And there could be maybe some reflections on just like maybe how you've been moving this far. This feels like a real kind of deep, with all these majors coming through here. It feels like there's this sort of like, again, a time to maybe need to call in the angel, your guides, spirit, God, whatever that may be looking like for you, and being in your light. I think that with Cerberus here, I was looking at this light, I think that everyone's maybe been getting a little bit too much of you. And it's just like balancing that out, a little bit. Or just making sure that you're just kind of being around the people, maybe who can help you kind of process this feeling, or just having someone to help you kind of get, like, maybe you've been in this sort of subjective state, because I would think that's really deep with the Hanged Man and the Hermit. Even the Moon, that really is getting almost kind of lost or maybe even not lost, but maybe it's just like exploring or wandering this sort of unknown space, and maybe needing some sort of like objective view there. Maybe it's just like this has just been a lot that you've been just sort of milling through, and just kind of sharing that to just kind of help you get back to just like an equilibrium or something like that. All right, let's get to your next card. Nice. So you got the Ace of Disc here, and I think that there's something, there's the reward for this lucky time, but something has been, it's like in the incubation stage right now. This is the seeds, of the aces. They're the roots, and this is the root of the element of earth. And so there's something that's trying to manifest, something that's coming to Virgo, something that you're trying to maybe figure out how to put Virgo into practical application. But it's just like right now, again, with the Pisces, it's still maybe just like a feeling right now. But I would say even too, if you're getting any sort of like intuitive nudges, any sort of like inklings, things along those lines, I would explore that, see where that's maybe leading you, because this could be, again, your, the angel just giving you like hey, this is, we got divine time in here, the clocks and things you've been waiting for, it's coming. But let's get a clarifier on this card. So you got the Eight of Swords here. And one, I think that this too, and that's interesting that the clarifiers are swords. This to me is if you've been feeling in this sort of stuck energy, that it was meant to be like this. There's some times where we're just needing to be in those moments of stillness, those kind of mental, how this person's chilling out in this cave, maybe feeling a bit, maybe almost ostracized even. Maybe you're not even sure like if people understand what you're going through possibly here. That could have been something, some real kind of deep stuff maybe that's coming through there. But now this is the seed that's coming to get you free. Like there's what the whole point of this situation is, or the point of what was the point of that situation. But I think there even is something to not let these, because sometimes there's a lot of nuggets in those like sort of like pressure cooker moments. There's where things are maybe kind of building up, those kind of internal maybe journeys that the other people don't really see. But I think that there's this not to let reflect the situation just be like, oh my gosh, that was a tough time, but what did I learn from that? Getting something of real value from that, so that this doesn't repeat itself, and these situations are handled more constructively. All right, let's go ahead and get your last card. Oh, yeah, intuitive energy all around. So you got the Priestess card here. And this would, what, especially with this lucky time energy, the Priestess will pay. The Priestess will lead you to gold, to a cornucopia. down here. But you have to go through the journey. This is, I want to say this, if I'm remembering correctly, I think that this letter is Gimel, which is camel. And, the camel carries its, if I'm remembering that correctly too, it has that hump on its back to store extra, it's a bigger reserve of water, considering that they're crossing these desert plains for however long, many, whatever time period. And sometimes those nights through those deserts, you're going through extremes of, and we're talking metaphorically here, and I guess in literally, where, there are these extreme temperature changes. I mean, desert life. This is probably something fascinating. I can't, what lives out there. But I think that there is, and really kind of feel that there's this, the priestess is lifting a veil for you. Allowing a light to kind of come through here, to really kind of see behind, the mysteries. The priestess is where her counterpart, the Hierophant, where he's more sort of exoteric wisdom. The priestess, she's more esoteric wisdom, those secrets, the stuff that you have to search for and things. So I would be curious even in this energy too, and it may be something again that pushes you in a way that flexes different muscles. And go easy on yourself with that Four of Swords there. Maybe you learn different techniques to move through this, and just being mindful of that. Of course, not pushing oneself too hard, but yeah, I think that there's a flexing of a new muscle here. A new sort of thing is coming into view here, but. Yeah, that's all I got with you with the tarot there. So let's go ahead and get some advice from the I-Ching and kind of wrap this thing up. Now, you got hexagram 33 here, which is the little pig. That's a little fun imagery. But this is heaven over mountain. And so, oh no, excuse me, this is earth over mountain. So if you, no, I'm kidding. It is heaven over mountain. I'm getting it together. But if you, and so there's something coming on even from that, when you think about that, something coming down from the mountaintops even. Getting like some messages down there. But if you want to look more into these hexagrams and the changing lines, there's a link down in the description box and all sorts of resources out there for you. But let's talk about line 1, because this talks about a little pig's tail. Danger. Do not go anywhere. Now, I want to bring the emphasis to the little pig's tail, because it's not just like any old pig's tail. This is a little pig's tail, which to me gives this thing of inexperience. That's where this messaging is, or that's what it kind of evokes in me is this feeling of, naivety or something along those lines, where taking on something more than you can chew. I would say that it's not that you're not going anywhere ever, but like right now, I think it's like really kind of reflecting on, am I ready to make this next move? Am I ready for, let's say maybe you're going to start a business, or maybe you're going to start a relationship. Maybe you're doing an endeavor around the house. Maybe you're doing something where you're going to join a group. It's just like, do I really feel like that I'm going to be able to be, take on this new load here that's happening. Maybe I need to ease into this thing. Maybe there's a little bit more, and like it gives me a different energy than just like procrastinating, because I know like you can only be so ready, but at least like knowing that you have a basic understanding of for what maybe you're getting ready to, maybe what you're feeling like you wanted to be called for, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'd be mindful too of just any sort of like hubris. I think is another thing that's coming through with this, that there's a difference between that and confidence. When you're feeling that. So there's just something there about looking into that. But that's all I got there for you. And then, and I like how this energy ends on, so we got the fifth line here, which says, a suckling pig is served at a gala. Good omen. When you're even just the verb to suckle, this is where we're not just like, we're getting nutrients, we're getting nourishment. And I think that this is while you're in, if you've been maybe resonating with, I can go ahead and switch back over. But while you're sitting in this, maybe again, kind of limbo state, possibly, this would be a time to work on some things, do some sort of like find some hobbies, find something that you're passionate about, something that, that stirs your interest in, maybe looking into different avenues about it, find some, remembering, maybe even reminding yourself why something nourished you in the first place, that could be something. And then when you go to present this thing maybe someday or whatever that may look like, that there will be some good omens to follow with that, because I really think that with this moon, and again that's going to also depend on the chart honestly, but just in general, I think that this moon is bringing a lot of movement, a lot of good omens, possibility for, maybe it's putting some people out of their comfort zones, but ultimately it's all about creating opportunities and flow, is what this energy is giving me here. So who doesn't love that? But if you love that, if anything resonated with you, give it a thumbs up. And share this if you know somebody who can get some nuggets of wisdom from this thing. There it is. And subscribe there, you high priestess. Hit that bell button to get notified when I release videos each day. And if you want to work with these energies more closely, you want to see how these transits affect your chart, or just want really just kind of dig into the tools that is your natal chart, find some areas that you want to accentuate more and see where maybe there have been some pitfalls, maybe that you've been that you maybe got caught up in. That's, if you want to explore that more, down in the description box is a link to an email, one, to get in touch with me if you have any questions about the services that I provide. But there's a pricing down there for them right now. And yeah, all that good stuff, all instructions on how to send payments and to get and what'll, that whole process. So, but also in the description box there is a link for my other channel, Alchemist 8, where I do one thing, which is weekly videos that come out every Mercury day that talk about the different planetary transits and the sun, when they're moving and what aspects they're forming and how to work with those energies. What are some practical ways maybe to put those energies put those energies to work. And then I also been doing those do these series, and I just got back, so I've been getting back onto the habit of that one. I have these planetary videos that talk about different celestial bodies in different signs in different houses and my thoughts on them, and hopefully just to spark some thoughts in you to get your ideas, hear how they've manifested for you, because these are just like general ideas that I've, things that I've experienced with working with other people with these charts and having friends and things, family members with these placements. So, just a little fun little extra series to do. So, but that's all I got for you there. So until next time, stay mindful out there. Keep eyes on that moon. And I will catch you on the next one, Sunday.